Good morning, everybody, and I hope you've been enjoying this amazing weather. So welcome to our DWP Digital webinar as part of Digital Leaders Week. My name is Brianna and I'll be facilitating the session today. And just to let you know, we will be recording the session. So in a moment, I'll be handing over to Karl Dickman, and he'll be telling you why a product manager would definitely win the Great British Bake Off. But first, I just want to give you a kind of short intro into who DWP Digital are, for anyone who's kind of unfamiliar with our work. So DWP Digital is responsible for the digital transformation of the Department for Work and Pensions, which is the UK's largest government department. If everyone could just put themselves on mute as well, that would be great. So we've got around 4,000 people working in DWP Digital across our 6 different locations. So Newcastle, Leeds, London, Manchester, Blackpool and Sheffield, although kind of everyone's working from home at the minute. And our teams work together to design and deliver services that will enable people across the UK to access a range of working age, disability and ill health benefits, such as universal credit, carers allowance and state pension. So I'd be grateful if everyone could just make sure they're all on mute. Yep. And if you have any questions as we go along, just pop them in the sidebar and we'll pick them up at the end. If you enjoy what you've heard, we've also got a few more sessions running this week from Shruti Kohli on synthetic data and Catherine Hope on measuring success. So just take a look at the Insight Live Week agenda for details on how to sign up for those sessions. So that's it from me. Karl, handing over to you.
Morning, everyone. So yeah, as Rhian said, we're going to discuss why a product manager would definitely win the Great British Bake Off, with a huge question mark at the end there. So I'm Karl Dickman. I'm Senior Product Manager here at DWP. So just to tell you a little bit about DWP, first of all, just building on what Rhian said there. So the department services are used by around about 20 million people. We pay out around about 191 billion to customers each year. We work in multidisciplinary teams across 6 hubs, and I heard something interesting about us the other week that I don't know if it's verified or not, but around about 25% of all the BACS payments at any one time are actually managed by DWP. So you can see it's quite the size and quite the sector for handling things like that. So a little bit about me. Or full-time product manager. I'm often doing things like this, running hackathons, doing lightning talks. Occasional baker. I don't do as much of it anymore. You can see 2 reasons top left there, my 2 little helpers. I don't get as much time to bake anymore, but I do quite enjoy it. So the first thing around why a product manager would definitely win the Bake Off. This is something that we come across quite frequently, right? We've all had the project manager or the delivery lead or your CEO asking, you've given a date, when are you going to get something? Now, this is always a bit of a dilemma for us that we face quite often, but it's something that we have to manage. We can either deliver on time or we can sometimes have to deliver quality. And the reason why we build in layers is exactly this reason, right? We could either deliver the whole thing on a particular time scale, but it wouldn't be the quality that we wanted, or we can build small quality iterations of it and deliver something that our users are actually going to enjoy. Takes me on quite nicely. We take pride in our work. Product managers do often get quite attached to their own products. You often hear it said about product managers, we are the sort of mini CEO or the face of our product as well. So we do care about it. I think some of the best product managers definitely wouldn't put something out there that we know our users would hate. I've been in the position before where you're not happy with what's been done, right? But we've all, we've maybe had the chance to work with a certain Diana who might keep your baked Alaska out of the freezer and ruin everything. Rather than put that in front of judges and inevitably fail, sometimes we are prepared to just put things in the bin that have our name against them. Same ingredients, same instructions, different results. If you've watched the Bake Off, then you might have seen this, right? Some of the instructions are just make a dough. There's 2 levels to this for us as product managers. Working with Ambiguity is something that we're really comfortable with. Now, our users are really great at telling us what they want, but they're not necessarily good at telling us what they need. So it might just be make a dough. And sometimes we have to play detective to work out, is it a sourdough? Is it a particular type of dough? How much? How big? When? These are things that we have to navigate quite frequently. The other level to this is actually when we're writing user stories for our squads. We can suffer sometimes from what I would call solution pollution. So make a door is probably the right thing to give some of your squads for a number of reasons. If we said, make 25 grams of sourdough, use these ingredients, it must be baked on time, we actually end up not just stifling that creativity and innovation, but we don't give the actual teams chance to think and build something differently. They're also working on our interpretation of it as well, and some of the best squads that I've worked with are really comfortable working with vague instructions like that as well, because it actually gives them the chance to shine. And what you can end up with is maybe using the same ingredients, using the same instructions, but actually delivering something that wasn't expected but was just as good. SMEs aren't always right. Now, normally when I say this, I can almost hear the eyebrows getting raised and the eyes rolling, right? But it's something that we do often come across, certainly in maybe older sectors or older organisations. We're really user centric in terms of how we build as product managers, but there's no doubt that often we're at the behest of a business. Now, saying no is one of our most powerful tools when it comes to product management, because you might have the CEO that's been in the organization for 30 years and thinks he knows what's best, right? But when it goes out to market, or when it gets launched, it just doesn't get taken. Rather than a sort of I told you so moment, this is our chance to really influence people. And again, as product managers, we're quite good at experimenting and delivering the evidence and the data of why we're deciding to build products. Don't get me wrong, I've been in positions where I've still ended up building stuff that was wanted and asked for by the SMEs, and just didn't get taken up by the users. But it is something that we come across. That influence is quite powerful as well, because often it's often quite senior positions and boards and other sessions that we have to go for to even get some of our ideas off the ground, right? So no matter if we've got the evidence for it and the user need for it, if the people in charge of the money are saying, that's not what I want, good luck, it is sometimes quite a struggle. But that influence is a really powerful tool for us. Test again and keep testing. Now, this is something that we absolutely live for right now. We've all seen it, and again, if you watch the Bake Off, the question Paul Hollywood will say, how many times have you baked this, or how many times have you tested this, or and the answer is, well, nobody. I'm doing it for the first time, and it's one of those sort of palm and forehead moments when you're watching it, because you already know what the outcome's going to be. Some of the best products out there, it's not a fluke that they do well and keep evolving. That testing is not a tick box for us. It's something that's cyclical, and even when something goes out live, a lot of people talk about alpha and beta testing, but something that gets missed is what we refer to as delta testing. And this is, once that product's out there, it's working out how to improve it even further. It's about not getting complacent, and sometimes it's even about finding that edge case. We don't often, if you go back to the Bake Off, they're not baking for sort of the entire nation. They tend to only bake for their family members, and that really limits them as to what feedback they're going to get. And it would be easy to do that, but once you go wider, you've got to really have that appetite to go out and keep asking and keep testing and keep working on new stuff as well. We design with our users and not for them. Now, this is something of a real passion of mine, and I see this quite a lot. That photo on the right really encapsulates it for me. How many non-vegans does it make to make a vegan cake? we aren't the experts and we aren't our users when we're building products. We need our users in the room. We need them to be involved in every step of the way, right? Because if we're doing something that we're not maybe familiar with, a lot of product managers are experts in product management, but not necessarily the exact product that they're responsible for. So you're really on a bit of a loser, a bit of a loss if you don't bring those people into the room with you and bring them on board. You know, it's a recipe for disaster when, you know, if you were building a product specifically, let's say for vegans, and you didn't have any vegans in the room, you know, what are you actually using for your research and for your personas there? And it is something that we see quite a lot, right? Now, personas often get seen as a bit of a tick box. You know, they get drafted up. Dare I say it, sometimes they even get sent out to external agencies who will charge you through the nose. They get pinned up on a wall for maybe a week and then put back in the drawer. In product management, I certainly try and turn this around personally. That, like I said, we need our users in the room, right? Because they, you know, personas and bits of paper don't ask the tough questions. They don't give you feedback. They don't have that valuable input. So it's something that we're really keen to do. So you know, if it was up to us, you know, Joy in the middle there would have had a vegan right next to her, baking as she went. And I think that was even the same cake that ended up falling over in that first example, which is probably quite fitting. Finding a platform is never a problem. When we're building certainly software and websites, sometimes we're maybe handcuffed to a particular platform because of its feature set or because of its tech stack. But the fact is, if the product is successful and has value, we'll always make it work no matter where we take it. Certainly in technology, we've seen so many examples of this over the last few years. There was a time where, you know, it was either building apps for iOS or Android, but now we see the same apps getting pushed on both platforms. There's very few exclusive apps, right? The other side of this is it's often seen as a bit of a bargaining chip as well, because we're not really like I said, handcuffed to maybe launching something on a particular website or on a particular platform, and we will make it work no matter where we go, and especially if there's a user need. Other people see this. You know, if we use the Bake Off example, there was so much talk when it said the BBC's not doing it, it's going to flop, it's going to be... And actually, they took most of their fans with them because people wanted to watch the Bake Off, not necessarily watch it on BBC. They were quite happy to watch it on Channel 4 as well. It's something that we see from an entire product, even to a feature set. So if you look at how most social media platforms look now, it probably started with the likes of Snapchat with the dead quick short stories. I'm probably going to show my age a little bit here, but I remember Vine, which was sort of 20-second videos. Most social media platforms look exactly the same now. They've got a short burst of a video at the top. Instagram did it, even LinkedIn did it, which I'm not really a fan of myself, but it was obviously in demand and obviously something that they took as being quite popular. So they took one particular feature, and again, it's something that we can do as product managers. We can carve out the value and make it work regardless of where we actually operate. Users never forget. This is a personal one for me. So the reason we've put Candice up there, when me and my wife were watching the Bake Off in this particular season, and I can't remember what I said. It was maybe just some off the cuff remark like, "Oh, she's good," or "I bet she's win." And my wife took this absolutely to heart. It kept on saying that I fancied her. Kept refer to her. If you're from the northeast, then this will be familiar. She kept on calling her my lass every time that she was on. But it goes to show that sometimes that we can build something really well, but actually even one mistake and users very rarely forget, right? We see this across a lot of organizations and often results in a bit of a U-turn, but it's one that people always remember. A couple that really stick out, if you remember the tail fins for British Airways, I think it even resulted in Margaret Thatcher covering it up, right? Because it's something that we always remember, and it's something that we're used to, and we see quite a lot of it certainly in brands now. Xbox and Microsoft were victims of this quite recently. They deliver an outstanding service, but they were going to put their subscription prices up, and before they even managed to implement it, there was an absolute uproar from its user base, and it ended up not getting done at all. But it's something that really sticks, and it's something that most users, when they have a bad experience, it can be one of those things where our products can deliver value that doesn't get noticed for years, but one mistake can really cost us. The proof's in the pudding. Now, again, if you're from the Northeast, that on the left is St. Mary's Lighthouse. It's a cookie cutter. It should be absolutely as simple as possible to have made cookies, right? But as you can see, rather questionable, certainly for 10 o'clock in the morning. You can see the result didn't actually quite work. Even with all of that theory, even with all of the user research and the testing, sometimes mistakes are made, and we can take them to heart, or we can move on. This is something that we're actually really comfortable with in product management. We often hear MVP getting used. I prefer minimal lovable product. Now, MVP to me is sometimes gets misused as what can we just get out quickly no matter what to our users. But actually, minimal lovable product is something that we should be aiming for. It should be, something a few people love that can actually tell their friends about and actually works, rather than a load of people that it works okay or just not at all for in this. And that's it. So that would definitely be why a product manager would win the Great British Bake Off. And thank you for listening.
Thanks, Karl. That was great. You took me back when you mentioned Vine.
I know, right?
So, thanks, Karl. So, everyone, if anyone has any questions, feel free to just either put your hand up or pop them in the chat, and we'll pick them up. Just while we wait, Karl, I'm going to start by asking you a question.
Yeah.
So, obviously, mistakes happen. And like you said, customers, they never forget. So so for example, say if something was to happen, that kind of thing, how do you make them forget? I mean, what do you do? What would your next step be?
So I think the first thing to do is just acknowledge it, right? Because there's nothing worse than not only making a mistake, but either trying to cover it up or pretending that it didn't happen. Because certainly in product management, right, there's so much to learn. Like any feedback to us is really golden. So you really want to try and understand actually what went wrong and why. That's the first thing, right? You see quite a lot of, and certainly from a marketing point of view, right? Like look what happened with them recently with Colin the Caterpillar cake, right? They didn't try and go, no, we didn't want to try and make it like that. They turned it around to say, look, do you know what? Like, let's do something about it. We didn't learn, and actually that's what sticks. And it tends to be the recovery when it goes well that people remember, and just acknowledge it. Because I think that's what most people genuinely want out when you make a mistake. It's Mary Gober says that the three parts to recovering a mistake are telling people what went wrong, telling people what you did to correct it, and tell people what you're going to do to not make it happen again. And it doesn't matter what industry you work in. Most of the best apologies we've seen usually follow that format. And if you make it, obviously working in DWP, right? Our mistakes, let's not beat around the bush. Like our mistakes are usually with people's lives, and when so that probably wouldn't be the right tactic, but certainly acknowledging it and owning it would. Whereas, like I said, if it's something like Caterpillar cake, right? It's probably a little bit more forgiving, and you can probably make light of it, but again, just follows that same format. Tell people what went wrong, tell people what you're going to do to not happen again, and tell people what you did to correct it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think you see a lot now in the media with companies being called out for things, and all people want is for them to own up, acknowledge what they've done, and kind of, do you know what I mean? But then say, okay, what are you going to do to change it? So no, completely.
Yeah.
I agree with everything. Oh, we've got a hand up. Helena, would you like to unmute and ask Karl your question?
Yeah, I would actually. So I work for a county council, and we've really recently just we had a partner delivering a commercial partner delivering all our IT, and it was very much a waterfall method of everything.
Mhm.
And my role at the time sat sort of in between that delivery partner and the service.
Yeah.
And it's taken, and we're now all sort of merged back together, and it's taken me to work out actually what do I do, what am I doing now? And the closest thing I can come up with is product manager. But because we're still very much in that transition phase, and it's almost like deprogramming from this waterfall point, how do you sort of demonstrate what would be a good starting point to demonstrate that way of working, of having somebody who's there to champion and not just delivering, because we spent ages working for those services to give us an exact list of exactly what they want and what button they want and everything else, and it never works. But I'm struggling to kind of get buy-in from people.
So I guess there's a couple of things to that, Helena. First of all, and I've been in similar positions, right? And what I would say is most product managers that I know, nobody sets out to become a product manager. Most of us sort of fall into it accidentally, right? And I guess it's some part of it's because of the cultural shift. Now, I've been doing product management for about 7 or 8 years, and I still feel fairly new at it. And one of the things I've learned certainly when I go into organizations such as yourself, Helena, don't even say things like agile or waterfall, or don't even refer to the terminology, right? You've generally got to get buy-in to the actual way of working. Some of it takes a little bit of influencing. You're ultimately asking somebody to take a risk, right? Because what it sounds like is you've maybe spent a couple of months designing stuff and building stuff in back rooms. Nobody's actually seen any part of it, let alone the iteration. So you can start to introduce some of the ways of working that we definitely know do work, such as things like show and tells. So you don't even have to use things like sprints or camp. You just have a meeting or a ceremony where you get everybody in a room and you say, look, this is what we've done over the past 2 weeks or 4 weeks. This is why, and this is what it means. It might not be something you can release, but it'll at least give people that insight as to what's actually getting done and why. The other thing I'd maybe suggest is try and actually run a pilot. Try and run a small piece of work that you can actually implement some of the ways of working that we use in product management. So let's say, I mean, I don't know, I'm going to pick a service at random, Helena. Don't take it as a it's just an example. But let's say it was a payment portal for your tenants to pay their rent. You could run it as a product, right? You could say, look, this is what we've done in these 2 weeks. We've got Jeff and Billy and Susan, who are actual tenants. They're helping us decide what they need, and we've built a part of it that they can use quickly. And that would probably be the first couple of steps. Just generally like sort of ease it in and drip feed it in, because waterfall gets a bit of a bashing, right? And I'll be the first to hold my hands up and say, when I started getting into product management and agile, I was probably a little bit sort of dismissive of the way I was working before as a project manager. But the way, it's just a methodology at the end of the day, right? Whatever works, you can try something. And whatever you do, I think there's always 3 parts to most of this work. You've got time, quality, and cost, right? Now within project management, you tend to cap time and cost, right? It needs to be delivered by X date by spending this much. Well, what you're left with is a quality, or what we would swap out in terms of features. So you can even start saying, look, if you're gonna say that it needs to be delivered by the end of the month, we cannot do X amount of features, so this is what you're going to get. And you can start sort of bringing in some of the methodology slowly, Helena.
That's really good. That sounds really helpful. Thank you.
No worries, and good luck.
Thanks.
Thanks, Helena. If anybody else has any more questions, feel free to pop it in the chat. Karl, I've got one for you. So working in a government department, what has been kind of one of your biggest challenges to kind of innovating and doing things differently?
So I think the first thing that I'm still really getting to grips with is the sheer scale of our user base, right? So, you know, it said before, we've got 20 million users. So I can be as user-centric as I can. And actually, this probably ties back to what Helena was almost saying before, right? Even if I went out to say 300, 400, 500 users, you know, there's always going to be a feeling in the back of my head that I'm just genuinely not representing as many of my users as possible. You've just got to accept, though, that, you know, on that scale, you've just got to get as much data as you can, test one small thing and build on it until, you know, you get that user case that says, actually, this isn't working for me. And it's about that continual testing. But the sheer scale of it is not to be sort of overlooked. You know, I mean, we suspect more people will be claiming some sort of benefit over the next few years as well, because of the changes to, I mean, you know, the world that we live in now has changed dramatically over the past year. Things like universal credit applications have went up, unfortunately. So, you know, we're only going to get more people, and it's generally the scale of it, you know, and it's a real challenge. But, you know, as long as we've got our users on board with us along the way, and we're continually going out and asking, then all you can do is keep delivering small bits until, you know, until something breaks or something doesn't work.
Perfect. Well, thank you. So I don't think we have any more questions. So I'm just gonna finish up for today. So thank you everybody for attending today. And as I mentioned at the start, we've got a few more sessions running this week. So please take a look on the Insight Live week agenda for details on how to register for those sessions. If you're interested in what we're doing here at DWP Digital, subscribe to our newsletter, and you can follow us as well on Twitter and LinkedIn at DWP Digital as well. I will just drop any information in the chat. If anyone has any questions or anything, feel free to just drop it in the chat. But other than that, I think we'll end today's webinar. And thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.